Good evening, North Carolina, and welcome to another Dalibor Petru world premiere. You've been listening to Plastic People of the Universe, a Czech band that was highly influential during the dissident period. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the play that you're about to see, Dalibor Petru's Samizdat Shabbas, with Hana Zahradníková from Prague, who is our translator of this amazing work. Good to see you, Hana.
Hi, Gregor.
And how are you? How's things in Prague at the moment?
Things in Prague are going down as usual in Prague. You know, it's in all our literature you'll find this. So COVID numbers growing, the weather getting worse, and so you know. People will read more books and watch more theatre shows online, perhaps.
Yeah, well, yes, and that's good to hear. The weather here in London, I'm in London today, actually about to start shooting a short film based on the last Petru play that we saw. So that was seen by a young filmmaker when it went out live the last time, and he's been inspired to write a short script on that. So I'm intrigued about that. But yes, here in London, COVID numbers are increasing, actually, unfortunately, and so we're all under full COVID protection, which is interesting to think that the sort of time period that we're in at the moment, with a lot of theatre and culture taking place indoors in small groups, seems kind of similar to how theatre and culture was taking place during the time that Petru was writing his plays. Do you see some similarities there?
Totally. Like you only keep your close-knit circle of limited number of contacts and all that. You probably don't want to go to huge concerts or huge football plays because you don't know who you can trust, you know. So who's vaccinated, or you know, who's a confidant. So yes, I can see the similarities. I'm not too happy about seeing them, but there we go.
Yes, no, I agree. It's not a happy time necessarily, which brings us kind of like to the title of this play. The last production that we saw was called very simply The Play, but now we come up with a title that probably needs a little bit of explanation to a non-Czech, Central European audience. Samizdat Shabbas. Now, if I understand correctly, that's kind of like two concepts from two different heritage mashed together there by Petru. Can you give us a bit of an explanation of that, please?
Sure. So Samizdat, that was the way Petru and his friends got their work distributed, because all official publishing houses in Czechoslovakia were state-run, and there was heavy censorship. So there was no chance for Petru to have his work published or staged professionally. And so these people, the members of dissent, when they wrote something, usually it was copied on by hand, you know, in several copies using carbon paper and typing long into the night, and then secretly distributed, again, only among, you know, carefully selected circle of people who could be trusted. So that was Samizdat. Till this day, there are like archives and libraries where you can check out the Samizdat works. And everyone's familiar with that. It's a well-known concept here. Hopefully, we will never need it again. Shabbos, that's a very well-known word in the Czech environment as well. It comes from Yiddish, and it of course refers to the Jewish community of the Czech lands and of Prague, perhaps in particular. We know that Petru has some Jewish heritage, but we don't know a lot about it because for two reasons. Because part of his family perished during the Second World War, but also because the communist regime's relationship to state of Israel was changing, and its relationship to the Jewish community was very unpredictable too, and so many families changed their surnames, and basically this was something that was not talked about a lot, and there certainly was little religious observance. Also, as you know, Dalibor Petru sadly died very prematurely, so there wasn't a chance to ask him about all this after the revolution, when he could have talked about it all more freely. But there are topics of the repression of Jewish communities in the play, but also there's a reference to the similarity of a closed religious community and the community of the dissidents being almost similar in some ways.
Yeah, I mean the theme of repression and as you said earlier, who can you trust? Who is not going to reveal you? Who is not going to infect you? Who's not going to bring sort of the infection of the state into your closed community is really strong in this play. It's interesting too that the last play we saw, The Play, was a two-hander, and a two-hander of characters who are remote from each other and unable to really make the connection. This one, and I don't want to spoil it for the audience, this one has more characters. And there's a lot more feeling of a kind of community that's in fear, that's a community that needs to band together in order to get through. I mean, I think the image for the play is extremely interesting. The marketing image showing people kind of entering into a dark place from the light, but into a dark place that actually is more comforting, which is more safe than the outside external world. I think that's a very interesting image to use.
Yeah, I think the word community is the key word totally for this play, because the main theme really is the dissident community and how it works, what relationships they have, how they protect themselves, how they work, but also how strange a community it is, in fact, because there are people who don't have a lot in common except for that common enemy. So
yeah, and it's also interesting from a dramaturgical point of view, in that we see the progression of Petru from being a writer who can write well for two characters, and then now we see him actually juggling a number of characters on stage.
Yeah.
And of course, the other work that you're working on translating, and I understand it's a much larger work and therefore takes its time, but Mother, Grandmother, Aunt, and the Giraffe, which is, you know, a much larger cast, in which I can't wait to actually see staged, because I think that will really expand people's understanding and love for Dalibor Petru and this amazing playwright that has been rediscovered.
I hope so, but obviously the fact that supposedly it's staged in the zoo, you know, I mean, it demands a bit more preparation than, you know, his other plays, which can be staged absolutely anywhere, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great kind of like mental images I take while reading the play, is of sort of like heading down into a beer cellar or somewhere in Prague with other patrons who have come to listen in private and kind of with some sense of danger to these words from Dalibor Petru that reflect the world they're living in at the time.
This is interesting, because actually the space, it can be a cellar, it can be a living room, it can be, you know, a secret synagogue. It's really quite open for the spectators to decide, and I shouldn't say more, obviously.
No, we don't want to have any spoilers before we move on. Thank you very much, Hana from Prague. And now I hand you over to the world premiere of Dalibor Petru's Samizdat Shabbas. Enjoy.